Welcome to the Made It in Music podcast, special edition featuring Carter Hammond and
X O'Connor.
We're so glad to be here with you. Seth couldn't make it, but we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to talk about production.
Production. My goodness.
And more production.
It's a mystical field.
We might throw in some mixing and...
Hey, a little maybe recording. Who knows?
Yes.
We'll talk about vocals. We'll talk about a lot of stuff. People have had questions, and we're here to answer their questions. Because production is kind of a, like, I don't know, it's a mystical art to some people.
Is it?
But to us, it's kind of like we're fortunate to do it every day. So it's, I don't know that we know everything, but we've had experiences both good and
Oh, now you're just being
bad.
humble.
No, not, I'm just trying
Let me say something about this man right here. I had a question come in from Adam Bright asked what producer most inspires me, and it's you, X.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's the only question I got because everybody else wants to hear from you.
Dude, I don't know about that, but I'm flattered that I'm the guy inspiring you. Are you serious? Right?
Yes. And I come from a long line of producers, and you know,
music royalty. Some would argue.
I didn't say it like that.
I said it like that.
But and just being around it, you just know high quality talent when it's nearby, and
Well,
so yeah.
Dude, I appreciate that, man. That means a lot.
Well,
We're having a moment. I love it.
As you can tell, there is no script to this, and very well may not know exactly where this is headed. But one of the things that we did identify was that many of you have fantastic questions about production and maybe producer manager. So let's start with some introductions.
Yeah. Tell me about Carter Hammond. What was your path into music?
My path into music was really one of a black sheep.
Okay.
So my whole family is musical. They're prodigies. They played all the great music. They sang beautifully, and I just watched from a distance. But the story doesn't end there. I thought, hey, how am I going to fit in with my family? And really, it came down to music business, you know? While they're being creative, you know, somebody's got to be able to handle, you know, the business strategy, the money, the finances, and so that was my applied skill to keep up with the Hammonds, and so
that's amazing.
So my you know, management and stuff like that, it originated working for an artist manager named Brian Coleman. He signed Nickelback from day one, worked with some other bands like Saliva and Oleander.
Loved Saliva, by the way.
Yeah,
I was a huge fan of Saliva.
Yeah, and I got to work out there with him in Texas, and then we then signed High Valley, which was, you know, country music duo.
Yeah.
And they were signed to Warner Music, and through High Valley, I got to meet Seth Mosley. And after getting to meet Seth and realizing, hey, you know, there could be some things that I can do to help and support him in his production, obviously met you. The producer-manager role kind of fell into place naturally. And I think that it really just was a culmination of growing up with my dad, who's a producer, started out early Christian music, and then just kind of from there progressed. Now he's doing some production for Disney. Yeah. And just growing up being around production, it was just a natural fit. And I love getting to work with Seth and you. And it's just it's a dream come true.
Well, dude, the dream is mutually shared, because since you have come into our lives, life is infinitely better. There's seriously, you take the things that that are probably the most difficult aspects of the job, and you remove them from our lives, which is incredible. Like you know, it's a different type of creativity to be able to handle the insane schedules, the insane deadlines. Like someone's just like, oh, by the way, we forgot to tell everyone, even though we've been working on this song for 3 months, we have to turn it in on Thursday.
Sure.
And you are the guy that figures out how to make that work.
Sure.
And that takes such a weight off of us in what we're doing every day that it's just like, oh, I wake up every morning assured that today's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Because Carter's got my back, and that's the best feeling in the world. I have to tell you.
That genuinely makes me feel good, man. Thank you for saying that.
It's the honest truth, my friend.
One of the things that producers oftentimes fall into is they get into the whirlwind or the black hole of work, and they forget about personal life.
Yeah.
You know, it's such an important thing, and it benefits your work in the long run if you're able to balance both your personal life, whether you got family or friends, and your work life.
Yeah.
You know, I think that one of the things that I noticed about Seth and you is that you guys are just have the ability, y'all are superhuman, that y'all can just go. But I consider it part of my job to kind of help you guys parse out, you know, what projects to say yes to, how much time to allocate, you know, and I want to see you guys thrive not just in the workspace, but also the personal space.
Yeah.
So anyways, maybe you can tell our audience about your not upbringing, sorry, background in music, how you got to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy journey, but it's, you know, such is life. This is my 20th year in Nashville being a professional music maker, which is really honestly crazy to think about. Other than working at an Outback Steakhouse from like the age of 14, this is the only other thing I've done, and that's pretty crazy. Like when I think about it, like that's not a lot of people are fortunate enough to have done that, and so that's, you know, something that I always kind of like reflect on, and just like, you know, on the days that are harder, it's like could be way worse, you know. So my path was very interesting. I was a swimmer for a long time, and my identity was really tied up in swimming. Like I always played music, and funny enough, like at the swim meets, there's a lot of downtime, and me and some buddies, we would bring guitars and like rock every Pearl Jam song we knew while we were waiting for our events, and that was a blast. And then like a lot of my friends, they were multiple years older than I were, and they were all going off to college, and swimming suddenly became not so awesome when your friends were gone, and you were missing like that musical connection. And once they kind of left, I found myself like starting bands with people that I worked with. And it was just this common thread through everything I was doing. Like at first I was like, oh yeah, the water is my thing. I like, funny enough, we were just talking about this earlier, but I like marine biology seemed like it was going to be like my path through life. I had already had scholarship offers to like Virginia Tech and University of Michigan, just for like different things for swimming, but to study different things. And I just ended up like, my mom had a cousin who went to a place in Florida called Full Sail, and she was like, you should check this out. And I checked it out, and Full Sail is one of those places that like, if you go and just visit it, you're going to go there. Because it is like, especially if you're into music, or now they do everything. They do video games, web design, graphic design, film. They do so many different things. But at the time it was primarily music. They did film as well, and some game design. But you go there and it's like, oh my God, I have to go to this place. This is the coolest thing in the world. Like I was there, and like Madonna was renting one of their rooms to like, you know, cut stuff. And it's like, are you serious? Okay. So 18 years old, graduated from high school, drove myself down to Full Sail, did the 14 months. For people that don't know, Full Sail's it's a tech school, and you do 4 years of education in about 14 months. So the school runs 24 hours a day. You on average had about 16 hours of class every day. It was insane. You had 2 weeks off during that whole time. You had a week in the winter, a week in the summer. Graduated, and being a child of the 90s, Seattle was the place that I wanted to go.
That's right.
And so right before I graduated from Full Sail, my dad flew up with me to Seattle, and I interviewed at some studios, and it was a no-go. A lot of them were like, hey, come intern. It'd be awesome. But music here is kind of done.
Wow.
And at the time, Seattle was the third most expensive city in the U.S. And I really wanted to like not have to work while I interned. I'd saved up like enough money to where, depending on where I went, I'd have a few months to just like try to intern, then get a paying gig. Seattle didn't work out. I was honestly pretty depressed about that, so I went back to Florida, and I had a guidance counselor at Full Sail, and she was like, just go look at some records and find where they were made. Just like look at a bunch of records you love, see where they made them, and then call those places. And I started doing that, and no matter like rock records, country records that I loved, a lot of them had this one studio in common. It was a place called Soundstage. So it was a Tuesday, I called Soundstage and I was like, hey, I would love to come intern for you. And she asked me when I could come and interview, and I was like, I'll be there tomorrow.
Wow.
Jumped in the car, 10-hour drive from Orlando up here to Nashville. Interview went great. She's like, when do you want to start?
Wow.
I was like, I'll start on Monday if I can.
That's
She's
so
like,
cool.
all right, let's do it. So
Yeah.
drove back, called my dad on the way back, and I was like, I think I just took a job in Nashville. And he's like, all right. So he flew down, met me in Florida. We packed up my apartment and drove up here. I had nowhere to live. Lived in a hotel for a couple days while
Wow.
my dad helped me find an apartment, and then we moved me into an apartment, and then I started interning. Interned for about 4 months, which I fortunately didn't have to have another job doing anything else, so I was just able to focus on interning. And I mean, we were going 20 hours a day every day of the week, and it was awesome. And then Soundstage asked me actually to come on as staff, and ironically enough, we're sitting in Berry Hill, and the studio I became staff at is like a block that way, which is, yeah, it was super crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to be back in this neighborhood and like go to all these places I went to when I was, you know, like some broke kid like Baja Burritos, like, oh, dude, we've been sitting up all week. Let's hit Baja, you know. We're done with the Wendy's dollar menu for the day, you know. We knew what a $1.09 could get us, for sure, you know. But so I was at Soundstage for a little while. That's when I met a producer named Pete Kipley. We were working on a Mercy Me record, and it was. He booked 2 weeks. He booked both rooms at this place. One room was a full tracking room. One was an overdub suite. He had two bands, Mercy Me and The Afters, and we were one band would track, other band would be overdubbing. They would switch back and forth every day.
Yeah.
And on the 7th day, like The Afters worked from like 4 p.m. to like 5 in the morning. Mercy Me was like 9 in the morning to like 4 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon, because they're family guys.
Yeah.
The Afters, they were young kids. They were just like they were ready to get it.
Yeah.
So. On the 7th, I didn't leave the studio at all. So, because there was nowhere to go. I had to clean the place, restock everything, back up, transfer files. So yeah, 7th day, Kipley pulls me aside and he's like, hey, man, don't be offended by this question, but
Oh, no.
are you homeless? And I was like, no, why? He's like, well, you're wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, you've been wearing the same thing all week. I was like, oh, dude, no, sorry. I'm not homeless. I have not been home, though, because you guys work all day. They work all night. And I have to do all this other stuff.
Goodness, man.
And so yeah, this is getting really long, but I'll wrap it up here soon. But anyway, so we did, that day he told the Afters not to come in. They took me to dinner. We sat down, chilled. Had to do another week of it, so stayed at the studio for another week. Shortly after that, Pete called me and was like, hey, man, you want to just come be my personal guy? Yeah. I was like, sure, let's do it. So that's kind of when I left the commercial studio realm. Yeah. And I learned so much from Pete. Like, Pete, you know, he did I Can Only Imagine. He did all the big early Mercy Me records. He signed the Afters. He found Phil Wickham. We did Phil Wickham's first few records. Shoot. And I learned so much just from, like, working with him. He's musically on another planet.
Yeah.
But he's a very erratic guy. And one day he just came in and he's like, I had literally just bought a house, closed on a house like 2 days prior. And he came in and he's like, I'm going to move to California. You want to come with me?
There you go.
And I was like, this was 2008. And it was like the market had just crashed, and I was like, are you, what? Yeah. No, I'm not coming with you. Are you kidding me? I can't. Yeah. I'm upside down right now, bro. I need to stay here. But he leased me the studio space that we were renting, and then that started my career as kind of like an independent producer. That was me then going bars, clubs, wherever I could, meeting bands, you know, taking meetings with labels, whatever I could do to meet people, start making music. And then a couple years later, Kipley moved back. We did a few records together, and that's kind of when I met Seth. He was writing with Seth. And then Seth hired me to cut some drums with him on what turned out to be God's Not Dead. And then we kind of just hit it off. We were making a Jeremy Camp record. He was about to have his first child, and he had to kind of step away, and I finished out just the last bits of the Jeremy Camp record. And after that, he was kind of like, hey, you want to like make this like a team thing? Like, this seems to be working. What do you think? Should we just do this? And I was like, all right, come on, let's do it. And so since then, we've been hand in hand, partnered up, and it's been awesome. Working in a team is something I think very unique, and it's something I think a lot of people in production often don't understand at first. Like, I feel like that's always one of the questions, like when artists are getting tours and we like meet people and everything, be like, so how does that work? Like, but I can understand it seeming weird to some people, but for Seth and I think we have strengths where each other aren't as strong. Like Seth's Seth's an amazing producer and an amazing musician all around, but he loves the inception and the conception and the creativity of like the idea and the writing and the like. He has a real gift for bringing that stuff to life. And I feel like my gift, my strength is more on the backside of things of like, I'm a little more maybe part focused and sound focused and maybe arrangement focused and like some of the nittier grittier ideas of it. And then like, I'm very good at closing things down. Like I'm a strong finisher. So that's like, you know, there comes a point in each process where Seth kind of hands it over to me and I kind of just wrap it up. So that was a very long-winded explaining of how I got into this, but that's kind of where we are. And hopefully it touched a little bit on how our process actually works, like
totally
in-house as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for telling us about, you know, kind of where you came from and how you got to where you are now. And I see it with you and Seth, how you guys complement each other, both y'all's strengths. And it's more than just a working relationship. Y'all have a genuine friendship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you almost have to be. This is a, you know, obviously it's a business, but at the same time it's like right now we're often in two different spaces, but when we're working on records, we're in the same space a lot. And when you're in a situation where you're giving critical feedback to each other, you have to be able to have that, like that root of like a foundation to grow off of, or else it's just hurtful. You know what I mean? Like music is something very soulful, very like passionate, and it's like, I just poured all of myself into this. What do you think? And it's like, man, verse 2 sucks. Kick drum sounds like crap. Like, what are you listening to? Like, this is garbage. Like, hopefully we're not getting that kind of feedback, but that's the kind of thing, like, you need to be able to take that and understand that it's coming from a place of like love and want to like improve and be better rather than just it being something hurtful. And I think for a lot of people coming up in music, and I know this is true for me, having that thicker skin is something that's very tough. I know I struggled with like jealousy and imposter syndrome, and I still struggle with these things sometimes, but it was especially when I was younger, and when you're like a lot of people are, when you're in that place where like each gig is what makes your money that month. Like there's no safety net, there's no nothing. Like when you're like, if I lose this gig, I can't pay my mortgage or my rent, or I can't pay my car note. Like it just adds this level of like, oh, we're gonna hire so and so to do this, and it's just like, it's like, wait, what? You just feel betrayed. Oh yeah. And it's like, it just takes some time to build up that skin of like, hey, it's nothing about me personally. This is music. This is what it is.
Yeah, dude.
You know, so it's with Seth and I, it's great that we've got that relationship as a foundation to kind of like springboard. Just, hey, he can throw anything at me, and he knows he's going to get honest feedback, and I can throw anything at him, and he knows he's going to get honest feedback in return.
Yeah, that's all great stuff, X. And I think that, you know, obviously the trials that you went through, you know, and developing that hard skin pays off in the long run. So
I appreciate that. Every day is definitely an adventure. You know, like you never know, and you probably know this better than I do, but you never know what you're going to walk into when doing production. And I think, you know, something we've had some attendees at boot camps and whatnot talk to us about is that very thing of like, how do you walk into the day being ready for what you're going to face? And the answer is like, you kind of just need a confidence of just like, I think that's what time in music gets you, is confidence. Like I don't know more than probably 90% of the other people making music, but I know that like I have something that's working for me. I've found something that kind of works, and I'm confident in that. Now, am I scared to death when I go into tracking sessions? Yeah, oftentimes I'm like super nervous.
Sure.
Because you don't know how it's going to go out. You're in there with a bunch of other people, all creatives, like, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. So yeah, I'm nervous about that, but I've been able over the years to build a confidence in like, whatever happens, I know somewhat about what I'm doing. Yes. So it's gonna be okay. And I think for a lot of people, just knowing that and hearing that, I think frees a lot of people. Like, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. Just remember, you're learning. You're never gonna stop learning. So don't think because you don't know something that you can't do something. Like there's plenty I don't know on a daily basis. Yeah. And we're making it, you know?
Definitely. Well, people have noticed your skill set develop over the years, and I'll just brag on you too. This latest Waves Audio endorsement, you're a Waves Audio producer now. It goes to show that, you know, okay, obviously you're making great music. Your skill set lends towards creating a great final product in the studio. And I think that one of the things that a lot of you know, the song chasers, the you know, folks want to know, or there's a lot of technical questions that they want to ask. So I know that we kind of went to introductions and background, but maybe we can hone things in a little bit more and get slightly more technical.
Let's do it.
And again, we don't have a script in front of us. We just know that there's a list of questions. So I don't know if you've had any time to take a look at that list and see if there's anything
I've
that
looked at it a little
out
bit.
To you.
Have you, are there anything that stands out to you? There were a few that I think could be interesting to go through. Sorry, I'm reading for those of you that can't see me. I'm reading through the questions on my phone. So okay, right here, Jimmy. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name, bro, because I'm going to butcher it. This is going to be terrible. Okay, so Jimmy M, you're going to know who you are. Number one, what are your top recommended shortcuts in the DAW? I'm getting lost in all of them. That one, like, okay, knowing how to turn the grid on and off, learn that, because that is one of the things that will slow you down. This is going to sound stupid, but know how to change the record functions. Like, know how to change whether you're punching record, loop record, whatever. Having to go and click that stuff or find it in menus takes forever. So make sure you know those. Know how to zoom. Know the quick keys to zoom. That will save your life. Obviously, save, create new tracks, all just the basic stuff. You don't need to know how to do the really random, super advanced, like, oh, this 9-key combination thing does this one thing. You don't need to know that. Know the basics. If you don't have to search for something with your mouse, it's going to save you a ton of time. So a lot of people don't learn how to do save as. Like, everyone knows how to do save. So many people don't know how to do save as. And as music makers, how many times are we making edits, revisions, all that stuff that's like, oh, I need a different version. If you know the quick key, and oftentimes it's just one additional key. So like in Pro Tools, for example, like Command S is save as, Command S is save, Control Command S is save as. I don't have to go to the file menu and go down to save as to do that. It saves so much time over the course of a day, because like today, for example, we're working on a Hunter Brothers song. I've done save as like 15 times already today. So just little things like that. Focus on the basics. That's going to be my advice to you on that. Second part of that question was songwriting template advice and starting levels. Thank you. Okay, Jimmy, shameless Waves plug right here. Spend the $29 and buy the VU meter from Waves. Okay, just buy that, because if you need to figure out starting levels, VU meter is going to be where you're going to want to do it. As far as setting up with a songwriting template, just get your favorite. Like, just start with a blank template. I'd have 5 tracks to record instrument inputs. Have the inputs already routed. Like, if you have a mic, here's something that really works well for people that are just starting out. This is how it is in Seth's room too. Don't bother with always resetting your stuff. Have stuff plugged in and ready to go all the time. Have one mic that's just for your vocal. Have one mic that's just for anything else. Or if you've only got the one mic, then you're good to go. But have that thing plugged in and have tracks in your template already routed to those things. So if you have 2 mics, have vocal tracks with the input for the vocal mic, have instrument tracks with the input for the other mic. Or if you've just got the one, then don't worry, but make sure you set all the inputs initially, because then it's just as easy as hitting record and you're good to go. And then set up your most favorite software synths. Like, you don't need to have every synth you own, but just know how you write. Do you write with piano? Then make sure you have a couple piano sounds set up, ready to go at a moment's notice. A couple of your core pad sounds. And then just have some tracks to put some drum loops on. Or if you have something like Easy Drummer, have that already set up and in. Because that just makes things so much easier, saves you so much time. Anytime you're not creating a new track and importing a sound library or something that's just going to eat up time, just have stuff ready to go. You know how you like to write, so you're going to know what you want in there. Like for Seth, he's got a couple piano tracks, a couple synth input things for his analog synths, and then he's got a vocal channel ready to go, and a click track, always ready with the click track. Just have the click track in there, so you just set the tempo and you're good to go. As far as levels go, use the VU meter. Just quick tip, if you're balancing your kick drum and your bass, get the kick drum hitting at -3 on the VU meter, and then when you have the bass added to it, they together should be hitting 0 on the VU meter. That will help you balance those two things, which will then help you balance your entire session. So pick up the VU meter. It's a plugin I wish I'd bought ages ago.
Awesome.
So yeah, that should help you right there.
That is fantastic. Management question. Taylor Riley asks, what is a day-to-day management schedule look like for you?
What does that look like for you?
I'm glad you asked, Taylor. So yeah, I mean, basically the thing I love about this is, there's never a day that is ever the same. And so I think that I would get totally bored with a 9 to 5, get in the office, you got your cubicle, whatever, going. Some of the things that I really enjoy just from a day-to-day level is just getting to meet interesting people. I mean, you've worked with artists and musicians and different industry folks, and every one of them has a great story to tell. And so, one day or 1 week may be full of meetings having to do with ways that we can figure out how to pull Seth and yourself in for production projects. It can also entail going through our own work processes internally here with production. What are some of the projects that we're working on currently, and how do we get from A to B, close things out, like you said.
Yep.
But I honestly love the fact that every day can be invented on your own, and it's very entrepreneurial in that standpoint. So, and also I would say this too as kind of a last point, that this is a lot more than just a business. It's a very personable career, because you're at one point trying to figure out the business strategy for the person, the artist, or the musician that you're working for, but you're also a shoulder to cry on too.
Yep.
And in a lot of different industries, that's not a healthy thing, but for something like this, it fits really well. So to answer the question, no one day is ever the same, and it's fast paced, and you just don't know what to expect. And so, yeah.
So you just brought something up, though, that I think is interesting to touch on. I think something that producers or aspiring songwriters or whatever do forget, though, too, that it is a business.
Yeah.
And you need to know how to run a business. That's one thing I feel like I didn't know when I was first coming up in this. My strategy for making money was terrible. And something that you thrive at is the ability to, not only negotiate with people and players, but to also stay on top of who owes what, where we are in the process of turning things in. Because for some people who don't know, a lot of payment in music doesn't come all up front. A lot of times it's half up front, half upon completion, but the completion portion is really dependent on a lot of things. It turning in not only the session, but all the stems, all the alternate mixes and all that stuff. So can you walk people through a little bit of what it takes to actually be financially wise in the music industry for a minute?
Yeah, sure. And we don't have to get too deep into this, but golly, yeah. I mean, so learning to say no is going to be one of the biggest assets, because I would say this, because with you and Seth, there's a lot that's coming in that you want to say yes to it, but you have to say no in order to have it make sense for the long term, and that can be from a financial standpoint too. So what are the things that are worth investing your time and resources, because time is most certainly a resource that will benefit you financially in the long run. Not saying that everything has to be financial, because it's a very relational business, but in the end you guys have to make money. And so I would say that when you're one of the things that we do really well, I think, is we put quarterly goals in place, and we say, okay, in order to meet these quarterly goals, in order to pay the bills, in order to sustain this, we have to meet X amount of production. And it has to be at a certain rate that makes sense for the business to function properly. And so there are a lot of folks that we believe in, what we'll call development projects, where perhaps an artist is not signed, but we believe in them enough to want to invest in them. And sometimes it's a risk, but you want to branch out, you want to parse out, those opportunities. How many of those opportunities are you able to take to where you're not just completely spending all your time helping to develop an artist versus what are those sustainable projects where there's a label involved or there's an investor involved and it makes sense to take. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you can just kind of, because this is something I struggled with, I know for sure when I was, first starting out. How do you is there a polite way to get someone to pay you what you're owed? Because for me, it could be 9 months, 18 months waiting on $300, and at the time $300 could be a very large sum based on your needs. So for someone just starting out, do you have advice for them of okay, hey, I'm working with this client a lot, tragically this is how it is when you're first beginning, you're going to work with people who don't want to pay you or try to renegotiate with you. Do you have advice for those people? How do you approach those situations? Because money is such a tricky thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is a tricky thing. At the level that you and Seth operate, there are agreements and contracts, and so you can always defer to that. But yeah, there are always, producers that are young and they're having to be scrappy. They may not, a contract may actually be a disincentive for people to work with them. But, I think that just trying to, if you do a great job and you're able to stay, with the person who's paying you to do it, and stay on top of them, trying to being able to pay you, great. I think that for folks that hire people but don't pay them, they won't last long in the industry. Sadly, you're not going to. It may hurt in the short term. It may hurt the people that they're not paying, but this music industry is such a small industry that where I think that if you find people are hiring people but not paying them, that's not a formula for longevity. So I feel for the people that are not getting paid on projects that come in. It's also a matter of trying to do the best you can to find out if the person who's hired you is someone who's trustworthy. Golly, that can sound like wishful thinking, but there obviously you get references, you find out who they've worked for in the past to see if they've paid them. But it is a little bit wild west, as you're developing.
Yeah.
But once you hit a certain level where people notice the work that you're doing and you're able to have a producer contract and have them sign before any work is done, then that's going to protect you as far as finances are concerned.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, because that's the things are ringing bells in my head now of other conversations I've had with people. And I know of a lot of people on some of the Song Chasers calls I've been a part of, at some of the boot camps that we've done. A lot of aspiring producers that are just starting out want to know how they assess their value. You know what I mean? How they determine what they should be charging. Are they charging enough? Are they charging not enough? As someone who works with producers at all levels, do you have any advice to people like that are okay, where do I place myself? I'm doing stuff for free right now, or I'm doing a lot of work for $100. How do I make that step to the next point? Do you have any guidance or advice there?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's when you're first starting, then it's going to be an investment endeavor for sure. You are putting in time and resources and building out a resume. It may not look like much, but I would say that a price is whatever someone's willing to pay in order for your service. If they're looking for somebody to produce something and they can find, say your name is Alex, but they can get something much better with Joe, because Joe is at a lower price, and maybe you're trying to charge something higher. But as I always tell you and Seth, good work begets more work. When you produce high quality music, and people start to say, "I want them to produce," my music or that person to produce my music, then and the demand is higher, then that's when you can start to raise your price and your rates and justify it, you know. So but there's always a price or a threshold that's out there that people or record labels are willing to pay. And so as you get better, as you hone in on your craft, you can start to ask for more. So that's a really good question. Let's start to get let's go back to the technical Japanese, which I will never understand, but it's so fascinating. It's far more fascinating, I'd say, to a lot of our folks. So do you have another question that
there's a few I can read off a few in here.
Please do.
So Amy Carlock, I'll pronounce this last name because I'm 91% sure I pronounced it correctly.
There you go.
I'm not going to go with 99 because Lord knows I pronounce very basic things very poorly. So Amy, I'm a novice with production. Do all your instruments need to be stereo and panned? How do you get your vocals and music to have presence in the mix? Amy, that's an awesome question. There's a few schools of thought on this. I'm very much of the school of thought of like, yes, I hard pan, I would say almost anything. If it's stereo, odds are it's hard panned. You don't want to eat up all the room in your stereo image. And so just panning something like 30 degrees or 30% to one side or the other, it's more clouding the overall image than I think giving space in the middle, because that 30% is still taking up a lot of space in the middle. So in a lot of my sessions, obviously this is genre reliant, but I would say in 99% of what we're doing, stereo pairs of vocals, hard panned. Stereo guitars, hard panned. Drum overheads, hard panned. The toms, I try to make the drums sound at least realistic to where they would like appear to be played. So sometimes those are a little bit more in the middle. Piano, hard panned. You want to leave that space, and that ties into your second question about giving the vocals and the instruments presence in the mix. Having stuff not taking up space in the middle. The things that should always probably, depending again on genre, be in the middle: kick, snare, vocal. Like those are the things, and bass, sorry. Those are the things right up the middle. So those things are going to compete with each other right off the bat. So by making space for your vocal is all about level, first and foremost. I feel like I always want my vocal to be sitting just above the snare, but as far as like having presence and feeling, it's going to be about creatively EQing your vocals and your drums. So just knowing a little bit about what parts of different things make the sound that you're hearing. So for example, like in a lot of singing in male voices especially, like there's a lot of body to the voice down in like the 200, 250, 300 area. In women's voices, it's a little bit higher, but typically kind of in like the same general area. And that's where the body of the snare is, and where a lot of like just this mess of kick drum stuff is. So by just understanding those like few fundamentals, and we'll have some stuff, I'm in the process of making it, that are little EQ cheat sheets to help explain this for you a little bit. But just having just a basic understanding of like what frequencies are making up all the different sounds that you're working with, that will enable you to carve out certain things. So for example, if your vocal needs to feel more present, like you need more breath to it or something like that, it's not always about enhancing the vocal or turning it up. A lot of times it's more about pulling certain frequencies out of things. So like if I need my vocal to stand more out front of a big dense rock mix or like a modern country mix, what I'm doing is I'm taking in the guitars, I'm starting to cut things between like 2K and 5K. On the kick drum, I'm starting to pull things out around like 4K, 3K. Same thing on the snare. I'll boost a little bit of like the top on the kick and snare to kind of like re-energize it a little bit, like 6K, 7K, because that's typically where de-essing is happening on the vocal. So those frequencies are getting pulled back down. So I'm adding in places where I'm taking away in others, and vice versa. So to answer hopefully your question, it's all about balance, just using your ears. But if you feel like things are fighting against each other, start by removing frequencies, and by keeping things stereo panned. That's going to keep a lot more room for things in the middle where your lead vocal specifically, should leave. So that, just doing that alone should help you get a lot more presence on your vocal.
Do another question.
Yes.
Great.
Let's see. There's so many. Cedric Israel, I need to know more about how to use mid-side and mono stereo techniques in modern production. Okay, I'm going to touch on this a little bit. This is a pretty hardcore question, but so for people that don't know, mid-side is pretty much where you're affecting the middle and the sides of a source separately. There's all sorts of ways to do this with mono tracks, but it gets a little more complicated. I'm going to use this in the context because I know Cedric, I think he's asking. Mid-side EQing is something that's extremely powerful, and this will tie back to Amy's question as well a little bit too. So if you have a stereo source, obviously it's taking up the whole stereo spectrum. Using a mid-side EQ, Waves has a few, FabFilter has a couple as well. It allows you to EQ things in the middle and on the sides differently. So for like, let's say for a piano that has a very wide frequency spectrum, you can take those frequencies that are really bassy, which take up the bass, the kick drum area, and just cut them in the middle where the kick and the bass live, like we were just talking about. And that will give them space, but it also makes your stereo spectrum feel wider. Like the piano will now feel wider because it has a little bit to do with phase, but you're cutting all this information in the middle, so suddenly your ear is attracted to the hype of the frequencies that's missing in the middle. They're now present in the outside more, or it's more defined outside, so your ear is drawn to it and the sound feels wider. So a lot of times we use mid-side EQing for things exactly like that, like a lot of synths and stuff that are very dense, that have a lot of frequencies shared with the vocal. I will mid-side EQ those to be like, okay, I'm going to cut all this stuff that's clashing with the vocal in the middle, but I'm going to hype it on the outside, and that immediately just brings a lot of life to the synths, but makes the vocal feel like it's still out front. It's not like just this wash of all these things just piling up in the middle.
Yeah. How much time do we have, by the way?
We have as much as I think we want.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up here in just a few.
I want to see. Yeah.
So let's see. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading through a few more questions because it looks like one. Okay, came in a little while ago. Okay. So Greg is asking, how do you mix drum plugins like Easy Drummer, Logic's Drummers, or other acoustic instrument sound or other acoustic drum sound plugins? They sound great, but when mixing with other instruments, they sometimes sound out of place. Greg, that's an awesome question because we actually use Easy Drummer quite a bit, especially on Seth's demos. I think for stuff like that, they do sound great, and they sound great like in a bubble. Like if you just listen to them, they sound awesome. They are awesome sounding drums, but what they lack is character, and that's what you need to add. So a lot of times that's just reverbs. Like we've gotten it to work really well with just adding some different reverbs to it, but a lot of times it's adding something to color them, to give them life, give them some kind of something that just makes them special, that it's not just a sound that opened up, it's something that's unique to your track. A plugin I love for this is RC Color, or RC Pro. Maybe it's called RC Pro or RC Pro Color. I forget which one it actually is, but I'll find out and I'll let you know for sure. But just search it, you'll find it. But it's like a vinyl emulation plugin that it does way more than just vinyl, but it takes things and it just gives it character, and that's what a lot of those plugins miss, are character. Waves has something called Retrofy, which I was just using on a track, and it was that same thing. It was a drum loop that the band just didn't like. They're like, oh, it's not right. It just feels kind of blah. But you just throw that on it. It gives you a way to add some compression, add some distortion, add some color. Like it gives a real analog feel of like it's an intangible, but it's like, oh, it feels different. It feels warmer. It feels thicker. Like that hair of distortion makes it maybe feel more aggressive. It's all about finding something that gives it just a little of the personality that your track has. And like I said, you can do that with reverb. Like reverb's such a crucial thing. Like making sure your sounds sound like they're all in the same space is important to your mix making sense contextually, or your production making sense contextually. So make sure if your vocal's going to a reverb that you've got those drums going to some of that reverb as well, because you're trying to make them feel like they're in the same spot. So just, make sure it's getting a little bit of that love, but find something that just gives it character, whether it's Decapitator or Devil Lock or RC Pro or RC Color, or Retrofy, any of those things. Just anything to give it a little bit of character, like any kind of saturation will definitely help. Yeah. Do you have any questions you wanted to get to?
I'll tell you, X, full disclosure.
Disclose.
Well, I was just going to tell you, all these are exactly what you're explaining right now. So I don't want to. I want to keep with what the demand is, because everything that you're answering these are very technical questions.
Read one out there and let's see what we come out with.
All right, that sounds good. Let's see, Jimmy, you answered that. Sorry. Here we go. Let's not do that one. Hang on one sec. Okay, gotcha. Cool.
I think we've answered a good few of them, but I think there are a few we haven't hit.
Which one have we done?
Haven't done that one.
Okay. Kim A. My question is regarding the use of GarageBand for demos. I recorded a song for Feedback Fridays, but I had to scroll the green bar over to the left on the keys and over the right on the vocals. You tracking?
A little bit.
Okay. Final result was the keys volume was too low. If I didn't do this, the volume on the vocals would be too low. I had made another recording of the same song and managed to get the levels correct on both. The slide bar is not numbered and therefore is difficult to find that exact level. I missed a comma there.
That's all right. I think I'm tracking with you, but I feel like keep going, and then I'll.
I have to adjust it before I hit save the first time, because if I don't, it has an auto setting for the volumes, which is always too low to hear my vocals. How can I fix this? I assume I need a second piece of equipment, like a mixer, maybe. Please help.
Okay. I don't think you need a second piece of equipment. I think you can do it all from within there. But this is a very complicated question. There's lots of ins and outs and what have yous to it. So I would say this: if you're listening to this, hit me up on Song Chasers directly, and if you can take a screenshot or a screen recording or something to just show me what just to give me an actual visual. I feel like I need to see this.
Kim.
So if you can, Kim, if you can take a screenshot or some kind of video recording of it, just send me a link, like a Dropbox link on Song Chasers or something. I will contact you directly and we'll get this sorted out for you, because I know you can do what you want to do with that. So it's just a matter of being able to actually sit down and talk you through it.
I actually love this question from Jackie Oberlander. I went for it.
You did. I love that about you.
Success. What do vocal stacks look like in rock and folk music? I know in pop there's a main vocal and 2 to 3 stacked on top, left, right, and middle, and maybe with a different timbre, but not sure if it's the same across all genres.
It's not always the same across all genres. It can be different. It can be different just depending on the song too and what the song needs. But I would say that in rock, on a lot of the skillet stuff, it's pretty heavily vocally stacked. I mean, on a lot of the bigger songs that we've done, it's normally a lead straight up the middle. John does doubles. Oftentimes he'll do doubles that are him singing, and then he'll do doubles that are him really singing, very aggressive, very loud. And then often Jen, who's the drummer, she'll do harmony, which is always a pair. And then oftentimes she might even double the melody as well. There's often low octaves. I mean, there's normally a lot of stacks in the rock vocals. Depending on the song, whispers can often be a great thing. In folk, it's a little bit different. I mean, it really is genre specific. You don't think of like a Bob Dylan track and it's it's wall of vocals, man. It's like pentatonics in there. No, it's it's a little more stripped back. I think in folk you're fine. Just vocal, a pair of vocals. If you got a harmony, I think just the song gives you context. So I would say just lean into what the song is asking for. I mean, if you have a huge rock wall of guitars and everything, one vocal is going to feel puny against that. Stack it up. If you got yourself an acoustic and a piano, you probably don't want a huge stack of, unless the stack of vocals is the vibe, you probably just want to go really minimalist. But my advice, let the song dictate what you're doing.
That's so cool. I'm learning a ton right now, by the way. So thank you for sharing. Doug McFarland said that he heard a comment about a producer that said that the producer's productions were always Lush. That was it was in quotes.
Okay.
So I imagined him saying it like that.
I liked it.
I agree. Here's your question. How do you create Lush with a standard band mix?
How do you create Lush with a standard band mix? When I think of the word lush, I think of very warm. I often think of like not very long reverb, but very reverb, like roomy, and just feeling like, I don't know, it feels rich and elegant. And to me, that's always a lot more analog sounding. So not super hyped, not super present. It's much more like what Jay Joyce would do.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like Miranda Lambert records or Brothers Osborne records, very rich and dense. So to achieve that, I would say don't be afraid of taking high frequency information out of your vocals. Cut some 5K out of there. Don't be afraid of letting your guitars have a lot of 300 hertz. Have things that make it feel almost boomy. Like those are often, everyone's like, how do I get boomy out of my mix? Those are the things you almost need to embrace a little bit when you're going for the lush vibe. And don't be afraid of space. We worked with a guy who did a bunch of Jay Joyce records, and he said that Jay Joyce always has a huge room sound buried in the back of all of his tracks, where everything's going to it. It's super long reverb, and he just rides it in there to where you can like just barely feel that everything is just swimming in this huge pool of room sound. And that's part of his vibe. So don't be afraid of reverb. Add a ton and just pull it back until it's kind of creating that effect for you. But for lush stuff, yeah, I'd say anything that can add character to it. So like Decapitator, Devil Lock, all that stuff I was talking about before, RC Color Pro, those will all help you get to that lush sound.
That's fantastic. I don't know what our timeline is, but I thought that it would be great to end with a word of encouragement.
A word of encouragement?
Yes, to our audience.
Do you want to do one and then I'll do one?
Yes. Why don't you go first?
You want me to go first?
Well, I could if you want.
Either way.
Okay.
I've been talking a lot. So.
I'll give you a break. So if I could offer any word of encouragement, and this is really, you know, I'm not a producer, I'm not a musician, I'm not a songwriter, but I'll never forget something my dad said. When he was working hard, he used to be a sessions drummer before he was a producer. He always wanted to work harder than the hardest working individual in the world. That was his goal. And so there's no such thing as handouts in the music industry. It's always going to be the people that work the hardest at their craft, that pay attention to the details. That's what's going to set them apart from everybody else that's trying to make it in music. And so with that, and of course, you know, he had to trust God for a lot of things and doors to be opened, and God most certainly did do that. There's an aspect to that. But he worked as hard as he possibly could, and that helped enable those doors to be opened. And if you know, let's say that there's, you know, some of the songs or the music isn't up to where it needs to be, don't be discouraged. You know, use those times of failure in order to learn and to figure out how to refine. Use those failures as a refining moment. I was going to give one more word of encouragement.
Do it.
It slipped my mind, though.
Oh, really?
Oh, here it is. So make sure that you are surrounding yourself with as many people that you look up to as far as production, songwriting, musicianship, whatever it is, because this is a very interconnected, relationship-based music industry. And the more people you know a few people, that will give the opportunity to open up doors to meet other people, to learn from other people. I love the fact that you're here, that you're paying attention to podcasts like this, so you can hear from guys like X who just they have refined their process. They're experts, and you get to learn from them. That's a huge deal. That's going to set you apart as well. So keep up the good work. I think I saw a sign in there that said "Dare to Suck."
Yeah.
And so do that too. And that's all I got.
Yeah, you kind of stole on mine a little bit. I was going to say, yeah, never stop learning is my biggest word of encouragement. Like the fact that you found this podcast or you found Song Chasers or whatever, that already sets you in a realm of people who are serious about what they're doing, wanting to learn. Never stop learning. I'm on YouTube all the time, figuring out how to use things or how different people do different things, because this is an ever-changing field where technology changes every day. Don't stop. Don't be afraid because you don't know something. Figure it out. Like, never say no because you don't know how to do something. Just be like, I'm gonna figure that out.
Yeah.
That's my encouragement, because you can fake your way through life. You can be scared. You can just hide. But go out, put yourself out there. Don't stop learning. Don't think you know everything, and don't be afraid to learn something new because you feel like you can't learn something new or you shouldn't be learning something new. Never stop learning.
Awesome.
Those are my words of encouragement to you kids.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, for being with us today, for all your wonderful questions. And we'll look forward to the next time we get to do this on Made It in Music Podcast.
With a the at the front. I kind of got a the in there.
Bye, guys.
Bye.